You finally bought that beautiful home espresso machine. But if you're like most of us, your milk texture is still falling short of what you get at a good cafe. Instead of a smooth, wet paint gloss, you're pouring milk with huge bubbles that separate into a stiff layer of foam in seconds. Or worse, pouring plant milk that immediately curdles in the cup. It is incredibly easy to blame your equipment. You might think your boiler just doesn't have the steam pressure of commercial machines, but the hardware is almost never the bottleneck. This chart shows exactly where things go wrong. Perfect microfoam sits isolated right here in the top right corner. It requires an exact intersection of your physical technique with the steam wand and the specific chemical properties of your milk. Down here is where most people get trapped. You can spend hours perfecting your wand placement, but if you are using structurally degraded or chemically incompatible milk, no amount of physical effort can rescue it. Mastering milk texture requires respecting the biological limits of your ingredients before you even touch the steam knob. Getting this right comes down to controlling 3 specific variables: the physical structure of milk proteins, the exact timing of your aeration, and strict adherence to thermal ceilings. This paper, published in the Food Chemistry Journal, looked directly at the effects of different steam injection conditions on cappuccino quality parameters. It maps exactly how milk behaves under heat and pressure. The researchers focus heavily on one specific whey protein found in dairy milk called beta-lactoglobulin. When you introduce steam, this protein physically unfolds and links with other proteins to form a rigid protective film directly at the air-liquid interface. It captures the air bubbles and holds them stable. Without a clear understanding of these proteins and their thermal limits, home baristas are essentially just guessing. We can see how this protein dependency plays out by comparing standard high-quality pasteurized whole milk against ultra-high temperature, or UHT, milk. This chromatographic profile proves the problem with UHT milk. Look at Chart C compared to Chart B. The extreme heat processing required to make UHT milk shelf-stable completely destroys the beta-lactoglobulin. The peaks are entirely missing. Without that whey protein to build a protective film around the bubbles, UHT milk physically cannot hold a stable microfoam. The air escapes and the texture breaks down rapidly. Plant milks present a different challenge. Standard grocery store soy milk actually has an excellent protein density of 7 to 9 grams per serving, which rivals dairy milk's ability to trap air. But soy has a major vulnerability. When standard soy milk hits the high acidity of a typical espresso shot, those proteins coagulate. That reaction creates the visible clumping and grainy texture so many of us have experienced. This matrix shows exactly why barista-formulated soy milk exists. To fix the acidity problem, manufacturers add specific calcium and phosphate buffers. These chemical buffers actively resist acid coagulation when mixed with coffee. You can see how UHT fails the protein structure test entirely, while high-quality dairy and barista soy both provide the correct chemical baseline for foaming. Your choice of milk predetermines your foam's maximum potential. Buying the wrong carton guarantees failure before the espresso is even pulled. Once you have milk that is capable of holding foam, you have to execute the physical mechanics with the wand. The process starts with the stretching phase. This is the act of keeping the tip of the wand right at the surface to introduce air and expand the overall volume of the liquid. If you are making a traditional cappuccino, you want to aerate for about 5 to 8 seconds. That yields roughly 30% volume expansion, which is perfect for thick, dry foam, but disastrous if you want to pour latte art. For flat whites and detailed latte art, your window is much tighter. You want a strict maximum of 1 to 2 seconds of aeration. After that air is in, you immediately transition to the rolling phase by fully submerging the wand. The goal is to stop the aeration and use the steam pressure to shear those large bubbles apart. The most common beginner mistake is frantically moving the pitcher up and down trying to chase the bubbles. You have to keep the pitcher perfectly stationary to let the vortex do its job. Perfect texture comes from a brief, precise injection of air, followed by stationary, aggressive integration. But that integration must stop before you cross the ultimate threshold, the 65 degrees Celsius or 150 degrees Fahrenheit thermal ceiling. When you push milk past this temperature, the proteins denature far too rapidly. The protective film they formed around your microfoam simply shatters, destroying the structural integrity. This section of the Unicam study highlights the hidden nutritional damage. Exposing milk to extreme heat triggers lipid peroxidation. This oxidative stress degrades the milk and produces end products like malondialdehyde. Beyond the fats, you also lose the milk's protective enzymes and vitamins. Once you pass 65 degrees, lactoperoxidase, an enzyme that protects against pathogens, rapidly degrades, along with vitamin B6 and folic acid. And if you are pouring plant milks, the heat constraints are even tighter. Soy milk has a strict ceiling at 60 degrees Celsius, or 140 degrees Fahrenheit. Overheating soy severely denatures the proteins, which guarantees the milk will curdle the moment it mixes with the coffee. Pushing for a piping hot beverage actively destroys both the physical texture and the nutritional value of the milk itself. To put all this into practice, this flowchart gives the exact variables based on your priority. For health, use pasteurized dairy with a strict 60-degree cutoff, preserving lactoperoxidase and preventing lipid oxidation. For plant-based drinks, use Barista soy milk up to 60 degrees. Added calcium buffers are non-negotiable for stability. And for latte art, pair pasteurized dairy with 1 to 2 seconds of aeration, holding your pitcher perfectly still. Success requires matching the precise chemical and thermal formula to your specific desired outcome. If you've been struggling to get good foam at home, your espresso machine's steam power is rarely the actual problem. Buy milk with intact proteins, stop the heavy aeration, and respect the thermal limits. When you respect the biochemical boundaries of your ingredients, creating cafe-quality microfoam stops being a frustrating mystery and becomes a reliable, repeatable science.